Hey, all right, it's 7 o'clock on a Monday. Do you know where your children are?
I have no idea. Somewhere.
Um, Good evening, everybody. My name is Raymond Newsom. I have my sister from another Miss Renee Cody, with me, and this is Death Scenes and Cemeteries. I'm still trying out different, streaming platforms and stuff. So this week I'm trying out Restream because why not? Um,
Exactly. Why not? I'll
Last
share us
week I
out
talked.
too.
Okay, she's sharing people out. I am my
Ooh,
sister from another
ooh,
Mister.
ooh. The
Oh,
volume's on too. Way now.
good.
Echoes.
Hey, I got to hear how I sound. God, that was terrible. Um, I had the wonderful opportunity to take and work a lot more hours this week than what I wanted to, but that is fine. Um, I don't know where my comments are on this thing.
Oh, Susan is there. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan. Susan's awesome. Susan's up in Mass. Um, she runs a team called CMPS, Central Massachusetts Paranormal Society. They did, what is that mission? I'm sure she could tell me. But they did a house up there in Massachusetts and went full scale Victorian gown with it and stuff. It was phenomenal.
Sweet.
Hopefully they'll
In
join
my
us
neck of
again
the woods.
soon. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still looking here. You'll have to excuse me, Susan. I don't know crap about this thing. I'm not lying. We might do it this way. Um, anyway,
Oh,
so last
Susan
week I
said
talked about vampire cult murders. What is it?
she said it's S.K. Pierce Mansion.
That is it. Yes.
I'll have
Um,
to write that down and look and see
Last
what
week
that
I
is.
talked about the
Not sure.
vampire cult murders, and I talked about the movie Suspiria, which is a personal favorite. Oh, there we go. Now I've got it. I figured it out.
Oh, hi,
I
Pat.
found it. Hi,
Oh, did
Pat.
you?
Hi, Pat.
Yay!
Yeah. It only took me 4 minutes, but hey, we're getting
Hey,
there. We're getting there.
it's okay. It's a whole new setup for you. And
It
Restream,
sure is.
you know.
Restream is Restream, and I'll figure it out.
Yep.
Um, This week we are talking about Mr. Ed Gein and
Mm,
the movie Psycho, which is a lovely topic for me because Ed Gein is actually a fair serial killer of mine, amongst many. And actually,
yes.
I'm wearing my serial killer shirt. It does not have him on it, which disappoints me, but I am still wearing the serial killer shirt because if I'm going to talk about serial killers, the shirt has to come on.
Of
It's
course.
either that or look all creepy and sadistic, which I do anyway. Um,
And that's why we love you so much, Raymond.
I mean, yeah, most of the time. Other times they're like, "Are you okay, buddy?" The answer is no. The answer is no.
No, it's
Um,
never. Never. I'm never okay.
um,
Oh,
Ed was based out of Wisconsin. He grew up there. He lived there. He actually died there in a mental hospital, which sounds like a lovely vacation. But
that's after he was found insane, obviously, for obvious reasons. Why that
um,
Mr. Geek he'd
it
like to do
was
with
more
that.
than once too. The first time he was tried, which we'll get into the whole death scene part very soon, but the first time he was tried, they found him incompetent for trial based on being insane. He spent
Mm.
time, thank you, Keith,
Thank you,
spent
Keith.
time in a mental hospital at that time. The doctors turned around and changed it and said that he was, you know, capable of actually being tried as a normal person. And they found him guilty of one murder. And then the judge turned around and went back and said, no, he's not mentally competent, and sent him to the mental hospital where he spent the rest of his days till 1984. I thought that was wild that he was actually still alive up till 84. So
Exactly. That was pretty cool. Because I had
I,
realized, I
I,
said,
I was like a year old, so I don't exactly remember directly, but
I was a few years old. I mean, I was a few years old, old, but yeah. And then here's the neat thing.
Fernando, yes sir, I
A neat
have. I hope
thing
you are.
about him is people would actually go visit his cemetery plot because he's in between his mother and his brother, I believe. And people would go there and chip away at his headstone. And then somebody had the balls to actually steal it, his whole
Well, no,
headstone. And
they removed it because so many people were coming and
well, it
harming
for
everything
the
in the first
article that
place.
I found that it was stolen. It was stolen, and they found it in Seattle in June of 2001, and then they brought it back, and then they said, "Yeah, we're just not gonna put it." So it's
Yeah,
stored somewhere. So.
but so his grave remains unmarked.
Hmm.
Um, it's funny you brought up his brother because there was a funny story, a wild story involving that. Um, the story is that the brother was supposed to have had a heart attack, and Ed took and was trying to burn his body, and the fire department was called, and then the police were called because there was a body within the rubble that he was burning. However, they also found out that his head had been crushed in a little bit where he had been
just
hit. So,
just a little bit, just a little bit.
was it actually a heart attack, or did Ed remove him too? We don't know, but
Hmm.
that'd be an interesting story to find out.
That would
The
be.
house no longer exists because it was, you know, somebody started a fire and it burnt to the ground. The property does remain untouched, though. Nobody really goes to it except for the few lunatics that want to investigate there. Um, I would be one of said lunatics if I make it up that way.
And then the fire chief,
We are talking about Ed Gein, Keith.
yes, Id Gein, and the fire chief, when he was called upon, like, hey, the Gein's house is on fire. Okay, I'll get there. I'll get there. He wasn't very too concerned about it. Come to find out, he's the son of Mrs. Warden,
Yeah,
which is supposedly one of his victims.
yeah. Well, um, the son of Mrs. Warden was actually the sheriff, or something like that. But he also probably worked with the fire department as well because it was a small community. But yeah,
Yep.
nobody rushed over to take and try to put that fire out at all. They
No.
let the building burn, and rightfully so, because
Hmm.
what led up to it is Mrs. Warden had been working at her hardware store and vanished, and the last person to see her alive was Ed Gein. So they went to his house to look for him. They found parts of her body and her head in a burlap sack, and then they found the rest of the house.
With all the
At
goodies
this,
that were inside.
yeah, he admitted to grave robbery. Using the body parts that he found, he would go to fresh graves. He made a belt out of nipples. He used a human face to take and make it. He refashioned bones. He used skulls for, it was pretty
Hmm.
wild. It's to the point that the deputies that had shown up on the property, when others showed up, they were outside vomiting. And
I mean, I think one of the ones that of one of the many things. I mean, he made a
yeah,
paper bag or
and
skin
he
bag.
was building a skin suit, which
Yep.
is very familiar to most of us because Silence of the Lambs, where he was building a skin suit so he could feel like a woman. Well, Ed went to basically become his mother,
Hmm.
and the way he would feel closest to her was to actually wear her skin.
Exactly.
So he was building a skin suit of people that had just died, and he was digging them up and skinning them. But they found other heads. There were heads in a storage building, in the refrigerator. Um,
He had them everywhere.
he sure did. Thank you,
Thanks, Tyree.
Tyree. How you doing? So, Ed Ed obviously had a lot of issues. He grew up in a very dominated household. Um,
Yes, Keith,
his,
he was one crazy son of a bitch. Yes, he was.
yeah. Um, this is an 18 plus show, though. By the way, uh,
Has to be.
his yeah. His mother was a very dominating woman and very, we'll say, overzealous Christian.
Yes.
The boys weren't really allowed to have any friends. The only place they were allowed to go to outside of the house without her was to school and back. And anytime they
Hmm.
tried to make friends at school and stuff, they were punished afterward. So, she was literally the center of their entire existence throughout childhood. Ed was actually fairly intelligent. He did really good in school, had great grades and stuff. Um, if I remember correctly, he was even offered opportunities to go to college and didn't take it up because, his mother.
Yep. He wanted to stay home and be with mom.
Yep. Um, his father was an alcoholic,
Hmm.
amongst other things. You know, he couldn't keep a steady job. All his mother did was talk bad about him. No, Susan, he did not eat the organs. That was Jeffrey Dahmer that ate people, and Albert Fish. Um,
Yep.
but so his mom was his best friend, even over his own brother. His mother was his best friend. So when his father passed away from, I do believe it was a heart attack that killed him.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Hooray for the fact checker, Renee. Oh.
Not that I like serial killers or related to any of them, by the way. So it's like,
Right.
I mean,
um, the boys started working around town doing, handyman jobs and stuff just to help keep the farm
mm,
up. That way they didn't lose their property because that
yep.
farm was their mother's entire world and she was theirs. And I I don't think we know what happened between Ed and his brother to cause a rift, but I
I
know
mean, I do.
he was getting kind of tired of having to do, you know, so
Yeah.
much to help keep the farm and stuff, and all they did was get berated. So,
Yeah. And then he started to notice um, the relationship between Ed and mom was a little too too
A
close.
little
You
too
know what I
close.
mean? And he did one of the articles that I remember reading. It did say that they did have words that they, like, hey Ed, like that's mom, like it's mom. I know you want to love mom and respect mom, but it's mom. But
Yep.
then everything was, I love my boys, I love my boys, but then it turns into everything's evil, everything's the devil, and the only place is safe with me, basically, mother hen. So.
Yep. Which is going to be wonderfully, you know, tied into what we'll be talking about here in a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but his mother eventually passes away from health issues, and after she is buried, it was a year later that he started robbing graves. He only confessed to two actual murders, but he was suspected of more, including his brothers. Nobody had any proof, so they can't tie him to him. But they had, you know, a couple of different children go missing. There
Mm-hmm.
was a man that went missing that had come to ask about, hunting on the property. Ed refused to let him do it. He was hunting near the property and stuff, so it's hard to say if he actually crossed that line and Ed disposed of him, which is very possible because, the man was not exactly all there.
No.
So, at this point, all we can do is speculate without,
Yeah.
really deep diving into investigations, which would probably take longer than I would have time for,
Yeah. But
disappointingly.
I did find a fun fact. So his car was sold at public auction. It was a Ford sedan, and somebody actually got to buy that car for $760, which is like the equivalent of like $8,000.
Yep. It was a
And they used it as a sideshow.
1937 Ford sedan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they used it as a sideshow.
Yeah.
Used to go back then and go pay a quarter to say, look, this is Ed Gein's. Did he move bodies from the cemetery in this? There's a
Obviously,
place out
yes,
in LA.
because
It's a
he
cool
admitted
town.
to the grave robbery.
Yeah. There's a place that was dearly departed out in LA. They had James Mansfield's car. Um, COVID, of course, closed everything down, but that was a place that was a
Yeah,
very interesting. Every time I used to go and look at their website, so I wonder where that car is now. Somebody somewhere on
it
the
is.
Times Market.
I know if you go up there close to Plainfield, Wisconsin, they do have an Ed Gein museum with a lot of
Mm,
the stuff that belonged to Ed. Obviously, like the lampshades and all of that was destroyed after he was arrested. Nobody wanted to keep that around to get into, so it was all destroyed.
of course.
And I know the East Alcatraz Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge at one point did have a letter that he had written somebody. I can't remember what it said.
Hmm.
It's been a while since I've been there, but that was interesting to see his handwriting in this and that and stuff. But one day I'll go up to visit the museum because I'm highly fascinated. Well, the property is still there. The farmhouse burnt down.
Yeah.
Somebody went to the property afterward and stuff and caught the house on fire. And nobody bothered to put it out because nobody wanted it to be there.
Hmm. Exactly. I mean, that's like what they did in Chicago with Gacy. I mean, they leveled it.
Yeah.
Um, they leveled the apartment complex for Dahmer, so they try
Yep.
to e- erase the bad memories so that you can make nicer,
Yep.
more beautiful ones. But people still
Gacy's home.
remember.
Yep. Gacy's home was leveled. I think somebody built a new house on that property though.
They sure
Um,
did. They
H.H.
sure did.
Holmes Hotel, they leveled that. It is now a parking lot for U.S. Post Office. I think
Hmm.
that was done on purpose. That way nobody could investigate there because it's federal property
Yep.
and you had to get permission to take and do it.
In which you'll
And
never get because there's so much paper. I mean, Jeff Mudgett tried. He got
yeah,
to go tour it once, and there is it's a little lap over of that land and over that he got to walk and see. So
yeah. Which the location isn't hard to find. I actually have it. Um, it is in my wonderful Google Maps with all the locations that I've been wanting to investigate. Um,
the bucket list of bucket lists.
the bucket list of bucket lists of, hey, look, this is, probably haunted as hell. So,
Mm,
they never, oh, as far as Gacy's goes, I am not sure if they have experienced paranormal activity. Nobody's ever said, but I would almost
they've
bet.
never said, but I've had someone, Lorelei Blondell. She did. She was lucky enough to get in. Um, the house, and that's the cool thing is because everybody goes, "Oh, Gacy's house was leveled," and no, the crawl space actually still exists because when you're a contractor, they left the four corners of the house and they just built on pre-existing to save some money. Um, if she still has it up, I'll share it if I can find it. She actually did get a walk through the house, and Keith is actually was alive that me and him were on watching with her, and he caught a real good EVP, Class A. John, stop! It hurts. So yeah, and she got a beautiful picture in the crawl space, and it's a clown. It's a clown. It's pogo. So, but I mean, she
Which
got
I
to
have
do it,
got
but
to see that, you know,
yeah,
costume, but that's for another show.
yep, good old cousin.
Hooray!
Hooray is
It's
right.
like I love it when Psycho runs in the family.
That's some, when I found this stuff out, I said, hey, that makes sense with some things. I get it. So,
Nice. He said he had his old hard drives up and running, so that's
oh,
awesome.
that's good. That's good. And then it worked. And just speaking about Ed, I mean, Ed has taken on multiple forms in
Oh yeah,
in in,
throughout the
in
years.
besides the one movie that we're talking about and TV shows. Um, Obviously, Leatherface is loosely based on
Yep.
him. Obviously, we talked about Buffalo Bill. Um,
Yep. Buffalo Bill.
you know, Garland Green from Con Air, that is loosely based on him. And then Dr. Oliver Thredson from American Horror Show,
American
which
Horror
the
Story. Yeah.
Asylum version of that. So I mean, Ed's gaining some traction. He's one that some people they do forget about him because it's always Gacy, Dahmer, Bundy, H. Holmes. It's that he gets Ed Kemper. You, you Ed gets.
He gets buried underneath because it was so long ago when a lot of these were
Mhm.
70s and 80s,
Yep.
whereas his was back in the 40s.
Yep.
But he's been such an influence to a lot of the characters that we see on screens today.
Mhm.
And that was one of the reasons why I chose the movie Psycho because, Norman Bates was very, very well based off of Ed and his relationship with his mother.
Mhm. Definitely.
And oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because he made several masks out of people's
Yep.
faces. He really did. That was another thing that they had found. He had made all these masks that he would actually wear
Hmm.
that belonged to other people. So, that's how Leatherface came along. Um,
I mean, I think one of the lampshades. You could probably Google it if you wanted to. I believe one of the lampshades, it actually has someone's face in a lampshade.
yeah.
So
And so that's why, it made sense to talk about the movie Psycho when we were
mhm, of
talking about Ed,
course.
because it was so closely done as to his personality.
Hmm.
It makes me wonder if the author actually went and spoke to Ed in person just to have conversations with him for research. Because Psycho was a book too,
Yes.
and then Hitchcock took the book and turned it into the infamous
Oh,
movie that we all know and love.
the
You
fresh
know,
the fresh, just a great movie. Great movie. Just anything that man touched in that time period was, other than birds, because I don't like birds, but even that movie, anything and everything. I mean, he just totally
he
changed.
he had an art.
Oh
He
yes.
turned horrors and slashers into an art before horrors and slashers really existed. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the great thing about, Alfred Hitchcock is he turned everything that he made basically into gold, even
Oh,
when it was black and white. Um, and Psycho was no exception. Psycho was something that nobody had ever experienced before.
nope.
And he took it to the best lengths possible because the shower scene is still, you know, one of the most infamous scenes in horror today, even in
Yep.
black and white. They did remake the movie later on with Vince
Yep.
Vaughn, but the original can't be touched for that
Mm-mm.
fact. You
Nope.
know,
And just that shower scene is 78 camera shots and 52 cuts to make 2 minutes.
yeah.
So I mean, he wanted to
So
get
it
that
was,
perfect and right.
work after work after work just to make it perfect.
Mm-hmm. And there's actually a
Yeah,
documentary called 7852 by Alexander Felipe that's about that, just about Psycho and about that
nice.
scene. So, and I
Um,
think it was like,
but it
and I was
was,
over like a week. I think that was like over a week and a half of just doing that. You know, Janet Leigh just doing that scene over and over and over to just to get it to its goal.
yeah.
Hmm.
And it's so much fun, especially, if you haven't seen Psycho at this point,
Yeah,
I'm sorry for the,
the spoilers.
it's the spoilers, but not really because, this movie's been out for ages. Um,
Exactly.
but the back and forth between him and his mother throughout the movie, you know,
Hmm.
it was such a phenomenal thing once you get to the end and you realize that was him the entire time.
Because
You
I
know,
remember watching that as a child and actually feeling bad for him at some point.
yeah,
And then, like just, oh my God, like I feel so like, oh my God, like
his
his
mom is
mother's
so mean to him
berating him and you feel bad. And then it's at the end, it's like, wait, what? Hold on. Stop the presses, rewind, let me watch this again. Holy crap. Like, so.
because you get to the point to where the sister actually finds the mother and it's basically just a mummy
Mm-hmm.
sitting
Just a
in a
moment.
rocking chair. And you discover that, it was him talking to himself back and forth.
Yep.
His attachment to his mother had become so strong that he literally became his mother after he had killed her and her husband. So you know that's the interesting part to all of it, because Ed Warher wanted to be his mother, create the skin suit, and would actually wear what he had completed, whereas Norman wore her clothes, and you know vocally, mentally, everything became mother
Mhm.
all the way to the end, to the point
All
that
the way to
she
the
took
end.
over.
Hmm. Which,
And that smile at the end of the movie and stuff,
oh, that
that
smile is
that was it is
that's
haunting to
that's
this day.
that's just saying that Norman is no longer there, and a lot of people don't catch it. Janet Leigh, when she does her crime of stealing $40,000 because for her married boyfriend, and she's driving down the road, and I love how there's fades, so Hitchcock is telling you, okay, days are passing and she's driving, so you're getting the days, the night and the day, and then you can slowly you hear the conversations that are in her head, her boss saying, oh, how could she have done this? I would have never thought. And like you see that moment, that same smile in her and Marion, then the same smile in Norman. So it's like they literally become each other, and they're mirrors to each other. I mean, Norman and Marion. There's very similar. There's letters in the name that match. Every scene that they're in together, there's a damn mirror.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's honestly what we love about the older movies too. The suspense, the music,
oh
you know, especially Hitchcock. Hitchcock had a way to make it very psychological while still keeping the horror and the suspense and the thrill to it.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's another tie into the whole Marion's conversation, is because in her head she can hear the conversations of everybody going back and forth, talk about her disappearing and the money disappearing, and even to the point that it was the gentleman that had placed the money there saying, "Well, I'll get it back no matter what."
Yep. And then the one other thing that I always find like little caveats is that Hitchcock had his daughter. She was the secretary, I think, was it Caroline, or the receptionist Caroline? I think that's his daughter is always in something in every movie,
Yeah,
and he's always because he's actually in there too at one point wearing a cowboy hat.
sure is.
So he was doing Stan Lee stuff before Stan Lee was doing it.
Stanley and M. Night, who
Mm-hmm.
also like to appear in his own movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, Psycho is top notch. You know, the acting was on point. The directing was beyond on point,
Mm-hmm.
and just it'll stand the test of time. If that
Oh,
movie ever disappears and stuff, I'd be heartbroken. Um,
exactly. And then to have the newer one, which did I watch the newer one? Yes. I'm not a big Vince Vaughn girl, so um but the the opening scene, it almost that director's
yeah,
all to
the
me, it's
movie
like
is
Van
actually
Damme.
really almost
It's
identical.
it's like
It's
scene for
incredible.
scene. So in the opening scene, and I just love how Hitchcock does stuff. It's like a random day in a random city in a random window to get it started.
Yeah, and then you don't find out until later on that it's actually Los Angeles that she was at. So
Yep.
the way he played off of things and stuff was just really
Hmm.
good. The remake honestly wasn't a terrible movie. It's just we prefer the original.
Yeah.
Um, So honestly, you could give both a watch and stuff, and you can see the similarities, but you can also notice the differences.
Mm-hmm.
Because Vince really didn't do a terrible job. It's just there was something about the original actor that had that creepiness, for lack of a better term, especially with that smile shit.
I mean, and Tony Perkins. I mean, if you really think about it, that role never escaped him. Never,
No,
never. That's like Robert Englund with Freddy. I mean, it just never escapes him. I mean, Psycho 2 was, you know what I mean? It was a good idea and a good premise, just but this the fact that he was everywhere he went. He wasn't Tony, he was Norman.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that happens with a lot of actors. Your first really major role that catches people,
Yeah.
that it it tends to stick. Like
Mm-hmm.
Jake Gyllenhaal will always be Donnie Darko to me. I know he played in other things before that and stuff, but Donnie was a pivotal moment for him,
Yeah.
and that's who he'll always be as Donnie Darko. You know, we have Jack Nicholson.
Oh, he's always going to be, and for me, Jack in
Yeah,
Shining.
from The Shining.
You know what I mean? People will say, and I mean, a close will be the Joker, but for when I hear Jack Nicholson, I'm thinking
The
Jack's
Shining.
running after me with an axe. That's what I'm thinking about. So,
So it's fun to see how these characters and stuff fall into certain actors fall into certain characters, and
mhm,
actually a lot of them are more horror based. you know, we've seen them in comedies and this and that and stuff, but
mhm,
it's that one particular role that made you go, "Oh, okay, now we see where we're coming from." Because
exactly.
even with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and stuff,
Hmm.
Jack was phenomenal in it and stuff, but he'll always be Jack from The Shining,
Yep. Always. 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 I mean,
unless you just can't unsee him with the hair teaser thing from Anger Management, which was just the funniest freaking scene ever.
yeah. Or another
He has
movie
a
that I absolutely love him is The Witches of Eastwick. He's the
yeah.
devil. That's a great movie. There's rumors of part 2 coming. I
They've had rumors
really
about
hope
a lot of
so. That
things
was a
until
good
I
example.
actually see, something more evident other than like a Facebook post.
Yeah, I know, but
I need
I
actual
always said that
articles and
would be
stuff.
a good one.
Yeah, it would be fun to see them all back together though and see how things have changed since.
Yeah, because I mean there is a second book to that, so it would be great. I mean, if they're doing practical magic too, come on, do that one.
Why
Each
not?
come on, the Witches of Eastwick. And then talk about Psycho. I mean, there. I mean, there's some famous firsts that Hitchcock did. I mean, nobody had flushed a toilet on camera ever, and he
Yeah.
did that. That's a trivia
They,
question. That's
they
always
had
been a
barely
trivia
ever even shown a toilet. It,
question. Yep.
it did not exist in said,
Hmm.
you know, movies up until that point. So that was definitely fun. That was definitely great to see because he was like, I don't care, I'm doing it. So he did.
Exactly. The executives are like, really? Like they come here, they watch. He sits them, he watches them, and they're watching the movie. And they're like, yeah, well, we can't keep this. He's like, no, I'm keeping it in here.
It's staying in because it's a pivotal moment because she had written out her, you know, confession. Yes, I stole this money. Here's why.
Yeah.
And then she rips it up and sticks it in the toilet and flushes it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, I would absolutely love to go back and see that movie and that time period and just the faces of the people in the movie theaters when as this movie just started, and by the time it ended, just to see their faces, just to experience that. Because I know my experience as a 6, 7 year old, maybe 8, and just going, I just at that time period and how life was compared to now, I would just love it.
It definitely would have been interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure people were just stunned and fascinated and terrified all at the same time. And
Exactly. Like it's a roller coaster ride with Hitchcock.
and it really was throughout the movie. It starts out, this man's trying to get a divorce from his wife to be with the woman, with Marion,
Mm-hmm.
and because she was ready to say, no, I'm done. If we can't get married, there's no point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I have all these debts and stuff, and she sees an opportunity and she takes it. So it starts off more like a mystery. Oh, well, somebody stole money and stuff. We're going to have to go find it.
Yep.
But then it turns into something completely different.
Exactly. Like, and I
And the
like one
draw
of the
from that and stuff was just great.
I like one of the quotes that she says that, because they're on their rendezvous together, you know, on her lunch break. And, and she's just like, I just, I want you to come to my house, and, you know, and my sister and I, or, boil a roast and have, family dinner, because then you can see my mom's picture on the mantle. And it's like, oh, we've got mommy issues too. Because that's she was done being
Yeah.
like this, the second fiddle in the relationship, because she wasn't married to the man. So she was like, wait a minute, like I can't do this. And then to meet, and then to go up to the house and have dinner, and have basically Norman basically cook her dinner. So it's just every scene, everything. It's the chef's kiss. It really is. It really, really is. There's so many hidden things, and the more you watch it and you rewatch it, you find something new every time.
You really do. There's so many quote unquote Easter eggs throughout the entire movie that you never know what you're going to find with the next watch. And
Yep.
that is, a lot of directors are really good about that. And it's just for that time period and stuff, it wasn't really heard of. So to take and
Yeah.
go back and watch the movie, then rewatch it, and you catch new things each time.
Mhm.
It's such a fun experience. I don't know if most people would consider watching a slasher movie a fun experience, but there's some of us. Don't
There's
judge.
some of us just like that stuff.
Yeah,
It's it's you know, I like later on, it was like, okay, as a kid, I was like, why is this filmed in black and white? Like, what is this? This is like what? And then it was, oh, then to come out, find out the reason why it was cheaper. I mean, he was given, this man did this, and now this time period we're talking about, with a budget from the movie executives and the movie studio of $806,000. That thing gross box office in that time $50 million. Everybody and their
yeah,
mother was going to see that movie after. So
yeah.
it's
They took their
it's
mother with them. Oh.
yeah, because they're just, hey, like, mom, like, hey, mom, you might want to watch this. So
Next week there's another fun show. Hopefully, Miss Renee is up for joining me next week because we already mentioned the gentleman that we are going to talk about, and that is John Wayne Gacy. Um,
yeah, cousin.
John Wayne is another very, yeah, John's another very fascinating character and individual. You know, his kill numbers were much higher than what Ed's were.
Hmm.
But along with that, you know, the conversation is also going to the movie 13 Ghosts. And the one that I'm focusing on is actually the remake. I
Okay.
don't think that movie gets more than nearly as much, love as it actually deserves.
Hmm.
That movie was so much more than people, gave it credit for. So that'd be a fun conversation. That'll be fun for next week. Um,
Yes.
and then right after that, it'll be Scarefest weekend for me. Um, unfortunately, Renee won't be able to join us, but
No, not this year.
hopefully
Next year, I
soon.
promise.
Hopefully soon
Yes.
I get my hug from you and Kelly. Um, that way I can kiss his big bald head. Yes, I said
Yep.
that live, Kelly. Deal with it. Um,
Oh,
and then right after Scarefest, whenever I get back with all of my fun stories from that experience, because there are going to be several leather faces there, which were inspired by Mr. Ed Gein. Um, there is a fun new topic and stuff. And I did not tell it last week for what's the point of having conversations about suspense and death and cemetery if we don't leave a little suspense for the show itself? Um,
of course.
and so I'm still not going to tell you. Um,
Nope.
but Halloween stuff will be coming up soon as well, and there will be a fun show after that. I do not have that subject written down yet, but I have some ideas. Um, we will make it'll be dark and gruesome and as lovely as possible because if I so choose, I may actually even show pictures. Um, I will make sure that it says 18 plus somewhere on the screen at the time
Ooh,
because I don't want to be booted off the air. Um,
exactly. But to wrap it
and how
up
are you
and
doing,
talk about,
Justin? How's Texas? Was it?
I'll come and tickle it out of you. Oh, well, I want video proof of that happening. But
I'll tell you, Tyree. I just won't say it on air. Um,
and yeah, um, and I mean, and just to bring back, Ed into this. Remember, Netflix has a series. It's called Monsters. The first one they did was Jeffrey. The Menendez brothers are on. Ed is going to be the next one sometime late 2025, 26. And Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy is going to be playing Ed, which will be interesting.
it sure
So,
will.
yeah.
Um,
I, I just
and
I
don't
just like
worry,
the
we
fact
will
that
get
Ed's getting
into.
I just like
Yeah,
the
he's
fact that
getting a
Ed's
little
getting
bit
some
more
love.
recognition than what he usually does.
So
If we
that's all. I
want to
just
call it
like the
that,
fact that
because
Ed's getting some love.
there's mixed bags when it comes to people talking about serial killers and doing shows and stuff about them,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Why would you take?" Some people actually try to romanticize it. It's not really that. It's kind of more of a reminder. This is what these people have done, and there are still people that do this kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Statistics that you walk by anywhere from 30 to 50 serial killers every lifetime. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be an interesting conversation in the first place. I would be open to it, as long as it's in a public space to where I don't die. Um, that way I can tell people
Well,
the story without naming names because
mm-hmm.
you got to protect your sources sometimes.
Of course. Of course. You got to do that.
So we've actually almost made it to an hour, which is a lot longer than I made it last week. Which the software platform I was using last time, it was kind of questionable, but it's definitely been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready for another nap. 40 hours in one weekend is not the greatest
Yeah,
time
I
in the world.
mean,
Um, and now I have homework. So,
life is just life, and it's
eh,
life and hard.
would you like to share out where other people can find you, Renee? Because
Yes.
she does do a few other things.
Yes, I do. I am the researcher for Cobra Paranormal with my brother Keith Ottersberg. You can find me on that. I do once a month every Saturday. Usually it's the first of the month, maybe so it wasn't happen this time, but usually the first or second Saturday of every month on the RNN network. We got the Paranormal Outlaws with my brother Keith Ottersberg as well. Hi, Pam. So, yeah, you can find me there. And I'm also a spirit mechanic trainee. So
She sure
you
is.
can find me anywhere and everywhere in the ether.
That's right. And if you
Mm-hmm.
all want to come catch up with me again later this week, I will be on with Spirit Mechanics on their Facebook page, YouTube. You know, we are a little bit of everywhere. And this week we are talking about cryptids. So we
Mm.
are continuing with the spooky for October because, it's Spooktober and let's do this. Um,
Exactly.
Other than that, if you want to check out any investigations and stuff, Renee even got to join me last year with Global Ghost Hunt,
Yes.
and we went to
Bucket list.
Bobby Mackey's.
Thank you for that. Bucket list. Big
You,
time.
oh, you're welcome. You get to see her investigate with me a little bit. All my
Mhm.
other investigations can be found on YouTube and stuff under Newsom Paranormal, and you can catch me with Spirit Mechanics on their YouTube as well. So we are a bit of everywhere, and we like it that
Mhm.
way. We are
Yep.
everywhere, and we are nowhere at the same time.
And like Norman said,
So
we
if
all
you
go a
have any
little mad.
wrapping thoughts, David, that's right.
Yep. Like Norman said, we all go a little mad sometimes.
We're a little mad all the time. But that's a whole
Exactly.
different story. Um,
Yes.
Dramatic pause with the drink afterward. Um,
Hey.
oh Lord! But you all have a great night. Have a great week. I know Mondays are rough.
Yes.
This entire week has been rough all the way around, and it's Monday, but that's a whole different story. It is spooky season. Get out, have some fun, get scared, watch some horror
Yes.
films, find some awesome
Yes.
death scenes. Let us know in the comments. Um, let us know what your favorite death scenes are and any
Exactly.
favorite cemeteries as well.
Mm-hmm.
So until next week, you all have fun and we'll brighten up your Monday next time. Bye.
Go get your spook